on the topic of sustainability, don't wait for the perfect answer. But be brave enough to go and ask questions. And if you're asking questions, you're doing more than some other people are doing.
What kind of perception do you feel or do you believe that customers have when they're working with companies that are a B Corp?
What are your values? And if there's a value that doesn't align, well, ask yourself, why is it there? Do you still want to keep it?
This is the Giraffes Don't Eat Steak podcast.
The podcast for curious marketers who zig when others zag.
In this episode, we demystify B Corp. Martin Knowles explains what it is, the 5 pillars, how to get it, and why certification matters.
Hello, Alex.
Hey Erica, how are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well.
You're in a jumper again. Is it cold there?
Yeah, I've got a nice breeze coming through, and so it's just more comfortable with my jumper on.
Okay. I brought my friend Martin Knowles to join us on the podcast today. Martin, welcome.
Hello, thank you. Nice to be here.
So for you, Martin, and for our listeners, Alex is in Colombia, which is why I ask about his jumper, because the weather in Colombia is definitely usually much warmer than it is here in the UK.
It's true. I'm in a corridor of wind, so it kind of feels nippy, but it's not. It's nice and sunny, like every day.
Well, we've had some nice weather, haven't we, Martin? It's been pretty nice. I mean, some storms over the last couple of days, but still warm.
If anything, too nice. And we were just saying this morning, we're still waiting for the grass to start growing again. So more to catch up on from that point of view.
And I have a hosepipe ban now. Do you also have a hosepipe ban?
From yesterday.
You have a hosepipe ban.
A hosepipe ban. Can you believe it?
How does that get communicated to you?
Usually through Facebook. Or the news.
And through the military police, so they make sure that nobody can break the ban.
Oh, look at that. Well, it's the first time since I've been here that I've had this hosepipe ban. And so I've been warned that my neighbors will definitely inform on me if I touch the hosepipe.
Wow. Blimey.
But it's all in for the good of the world, right? It's for sustainability. And that's partly what we're here to talk about, right, Martin? You are a firm believer in and you belong to B Corp, right?
We are a certified B Corp. That's right. We're certified in 2020.
So what does that mean? What does it mean to be a certified B Corp?
Well, interestingly, the number of B Corps globally has just gone past 10,000. So I think it was this week. It's been in just the last few days. And B Corp there's a quite strict, tough governance process you need to go through to certify as a B Corp. At the moment, the certification is about to change, but at the moment there are 5 pillars, and so you need to certify under a mix of those 5 pillars, and you have to reach a total of 80 points. But it's a certification that assesses your sustainability credentials as a business in the broadest possible sense. So the environmental piece is just one of the 5 pillars, and there are other topics that go into how do you deal with your customers, how do you deal with your supply chain, what about the people and the relationships with the people and how you employ them. So all those things are part of building a sustainable business.
So sort of people, profit, planet, is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so the ESG, if people are familiar with that term. So, that broad piece about how do you build a sustainable business, covering off all the aspects of sustainability.
Awesome.
That is awesome. What's the origin of B Corp?
It started in the States, no surprise. So it started in the States, then gone internationally, and I think it's 100 and something countries now. The UK, I think I'm right in saying the UK is the second largest country now in terms of representation. And last thing I knew, it was the fastest growing. So COVID just provided this real impetus to people wanting to certify in the UK. And so, it's particularly big here, disproportionately big here.
And how does it affect how you do business or who you do business with, Martin?
It's an interesting question, isn't it? Whether it's the chicken or the egg. So when we first came across B Corp, it sounded like the way that we did business, and we said, well, that seems to reflect our values. So we then looked at the certification and found it was possible to become a B Corp. So we didn't have to make massive changes in the way we approached business as a whole. Some things have changed, of course. I think for other businesses, maybe they do have to make some fundamental changes. So I know some new businesses have this discussion about you're almost better off building your business from the start if you're a startup, so it can become a B Corp, and then you can put the certification in place later on, rather than getting into inverted commas bad habits and then having to go back and change those habits.
So give us an example, a practical example on one of the pillars.
Well, you mean in terms of the things that might change?
No, what it means to be a B Corp. Like, what is one of the things you have to do?
Quite a wide range of things. So if I think back to the things that we did need to change, we had to think about what are our emissions as a business. So the start point of that for most businesses is I have no idea. So we had to think about how do you measure the emissions in a business? How do you capture the information that helps you measure them? And then when you've done that as a start point, how then do you build a plan that says, how are we going to improve upon it? So the objective is to reduce emissions over time, and you can only do that if you've got a meaningful plan to start with. So that would be one piece, and obviously it relates directly to the environment. But there are other examples as well in whole different areas. So, for example, you might look at one of the challenging ones for B Corps in the UK is who do you bank with? So I think it's quite widely understood that there are, I think the number is £3 trillion in people's pensions in the UK, and most of that, or a lot of it, is with organisations that are investing in industries or sectors that people might not actually want to be investing in, but is wrapped up in these huge funds. And so B Corp, one of the B Corp standards is who do you bank with, and are you banking with a business that banks ethically and runs its organization ethically, rather than just one of the big organizations who I'll probably refrain from naming here.
Okay, that's really interesting, because I think a lot of businesses, when they think of sustainability and how we can contribute, the first thing that comes to mind, right, is how do I reduce paper? What do you think, Alex? Is that like first easy thing is how do I reduce paper in my business?
It's definitely a big one, especially if you're in an office and you don't have, it's not something obvious like a haulage company or something like that, where you would automatically think about your emissions. But yeah, if it's like an office job, yeah, I mean, a lot of the time it's like, well, okay, let's stop printing and let's send emails. But then I guess there's a lot of sustainability, there's a lot of emissions to think around, especially if you're using AI, because AI is a huge burner of energy, and it takes up a lot of energy. So I guess there's other tools that you need to think about that you're using in your business and what the impact that has on the environment, right?
You do, and one of the big challenges for any business trying to figure out an emissions plan, if you're talking specifically about that, is materiality, and it's sort of trying to figure out what are the big things that are material to the decision. And to give you another example, we have used various different systems to assess what emissions we're generating. One of them said we're generating a lot of emissions on food, and we don't have food, so it was just adding up the emissions we were creating by going and having a sandwich on the way back from a meeting or something, and it didn't seem quite right. And I spent a long time digging into it to figure out, well, how do you get an accurate measure of the emissions on a sandwich in Pret? And in the end, you're just wasting your time. It's just not material enough to be a worthwhile exercise. So I think you're trading off, trying to figure out what are the big things. And for us, the big things are travel to clients, because that does generate emissions, and heating and lighting, particularly heating the office, where in the UK we're mainly gas. So how do you escape from gas, which is pretty carbon heavy? So it's sort of figuring out what are the big things and trying to make a difference to those big things, rather than trying to sweat every single detail about how many reams of paper have we got through this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a carbon literacy certification last year. And that was also the big realization for me, is the things that come first to mind are like paper and that kind of stuff are actually small in the big scheme of things. But for example, my big burner was I was doing 3-4 trips to South Africa a year. And that was more than half of my emissions was just the flights, right? So how do I, it's for client work, so there's a reason, but perhaps I don't need to do 4, maybe I do, 2 or 1. And that was my big burner. So it's about focusing on that rather than trying to work out, oh, I had to print 3 pieces of paper last week. What do I do now?
Yeah, I mean, proportionately, they're just so different, aren't they? And I guess because flights are relatively cheap for us these days, you maybe don't think that one flight to South Africa is probably more emissions than driving your car to clients for the rest of the year. So,
Yeah.
You can't offset it. The only way you can stop it is by reducing the number of flights. And clearly, where it's client stuff, then it will be, there's a point where it's crazy to stop it. So we have to try and figure things out. So I think this is part of the challenge for us, is the stuff we can do now, and things we can reduce now. But then there's also that question, well, how do we ask the questions that help people think differently about the systems we're going to have in place in 10 years time or in 20 years time, when you would assume, even if you do fly, that the emissions from that flight will be very different from how they are today. So and that's down to the smart scientists, not down to me to figure out what those answers are.
Absolutely.
And what kind of perception do you feel, or do you believe that customers have when they're working with companies that are a B Corp company? Do you think, do you have it? Do you get the feeling with that when you're working with people? Do you attract a certain type of client?
Yeah, I think it does make a difference, and the question's interesting because people's responses inevitably vary from what on earth's a B Corp, I don't know, through to I think I know what one is, but I don't care, through to I'm really passionate about it and it makes a difference to my buying choices. So there's that whole spectrum of people with different perspectives on it. I think the way I describe it is, if you think we've got 5.5 million small businesses in the UK, which is just an extraordinary number of small businesses, and I think I say they're like Ford Fiestas. So it's a small, reliable, perfectly great vehicle, does the job. If you turn up as a B Corp, people think you're in a Rolls Royce, and it's just the quality of engineering that goes into it. People just assume that you're bigger, more prestigious, better organized, better structured. I think people's perception just shifts in terms of the impact that you have as an organization. So that only gets you so far, and if you're no good at what you do, you'll get found out very quickly. But I think it gives you it gives people the perception that you're on a different scale of professionalism.
Wow, that's interesting. It's a bit like Alex, we used to say, people used to assume that if you've got a TV ad, you must be big.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you have a TV ad, you must be massive. That was the old perception. I don't think it's true anymore, but that's what it used to be. So it's perception is reality.
Agreed.
The other thing that I find a little bit difficult is the supplier angle, right? So part of doing good for the environment is to make sure that the suppliers that you work with are also doing good, because it's no good you're buying from a supplier who's, and a bit to your banking example, right? Like you need to be aware. But what do you do with like Microsoft that you don't have a choice? Like, the big ones like Microsoft or Adobe or whatever else you have to use as tools in your business. Us as a small little company, if we go to them going, please change your policy or else we're going to leave you, are they going to care? Are they going to just go, well, okay, bye, move on? Like, where does that fit into the scheme of things?
Yeah, it's an interesting one to consider, isn't it? That I think the first and foremost thing is you've got to run your business sensibly, and so there are decisions you will just will make the right decision. So it would be foolish of us not to use Microsoft or organizations like that, because there isn't a small local alternative, or not at least not one that's viable. So it wouldn't be practical. I think from time to time people have started up in competition with Google, and again, it's going to be quite a nice idea, but in reality it's so difficult for those businesses to get traction. So I think so first of all, you've got to ask, is there a viable alternative? The second thing is you come back to the materiality thing. Well, if we're getting our software license from Microsoft, honestly, the impact of us having that software license still is not the same as me taking a flight to South Africa or me driving to Manchester or whatever it might be. So, so still focus on the materiality stuff. So I think those are the important things. And then sometimes there are things that you can, if you have it in mind, you can selectively pick your battles and campaign for things, or push, like you said, push back to organizations and say, look, I want to know more about your environmental credentials, or you make a purchase that you buy something green. Or I think for some time we've sent out copies of our book always in a green envelope rather than a, not colored green, but it's a recycled envelope rather than one that's from virgin materials. I think you can sort of push the system, but we're not going to. I'm not really thinking I'm going to overthrow Microsoft and come up with a nice environmental alternative in the near future.
I think, yeah, your point about viability is such an important point, and it's really, I mean, you have to be kind of realistic in those situations, because then there are other options, and like you're talking about people competing with Google, for example, there are quite a few other browsers where every time you search, that the money that they gain from ads popping up on there goes straight to helping the ocean or the trees or something like that. And I've tried a few of those, and after a while, I've always reverted back to Google, because the search results are just not there for me. They're not as good, and it's affecting my productivity, which then ultimately affects my clients. So it's the balancing act you've got to make between having an excellent business that serves your clients well versus your sustainability goals, and finding the ones that actually make the big difference. Like you said, is Microsoft going to be as big a difference as changing from Microsoft? Is that going to be a bigger difference from having an online meeting with someone in South Africa rather than flying to with them? And so you have to find that right balance. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And so one of the things that stands out about B Corp is the phenomenal community. And you ask people who are in it, they'll say the community amongst businesses is really something special. So there are organizations in B Corp who will say we will make it our priority to purchase things from other B Corps. But still, you come back to, well, there isn't an alternative to Microsoft. But for example, actually, there is an alternative to Eventbrite, who are really good, and who've probably got better usability and a user interface than Eventbrite at a cheaper price, who are B Corp. And you'll get a mobile company that's a B Corp, or we get our broadband from a B Corp, who've been fantastic. So there are choices you can make that don't have a material negative impact on the service that you need to buy. And people amongst the B Corp community quite often will make those choices first and then go to somebody else second if they can't find someone in the community.
Okay, that's quite helpful. And then on the other end of the scale, you get people who talk a lot about sustainability and all the rest, but just, for example, every meeting you come to, I'm going to donate to plant a tree, right? So and that's just an example. Or, I'm going to put 5p into an ocean fund or something like that. What is your opinion on adding value there versus being B Corp certified like you've chosen?
Well, then those sorts of things are not mutually exclusive. So I think a lot of the things, and I hope that tree planting has gone a bit out of fashion, because I think it felt like a bit of a gimmick for a while, and mostly those trees are tiny little saplings, if that's it, probably not even a sapling, that isn't going to take out any material carbon for many years. So you probably got to talk 20 years or something. So I think that became a bit of a gimmick, and in the end you're saying, well, I'm giving 5p for you turning up at a meeting. It's not really meaningful. So I think we need to try and avoid the gimmicks, but we do need to offset. We've looked at alternatives to heating our office that are other than gas, and we haven't found one. The only alternative is being coal. So those are the two choices at the moment. And so we do buy offsets, and we do our best to make some choices about the offsets that we're getting. So for us, we use a company called Gold Standard, who have a register of global projects, and they retire carbon credits from the register. So you hope you can do your best to try and find ones that are a little bit more regulated than just planting trees in a random field in Scotland. So
It's usually Scotland, isn't
that's
it? It's usually
one way of
Scotland.
going about it.
And I read an article that some of the trees, some of these areas, the trees are actually not indigenous, so they're actually worse for the area by planting these trees. They kill everything else, right?
There's so many problems, and I think you've highlighted something, which is the reason that, you know, do you talk about, is it greenwashing or green hushing? And but it's some people are holding back from claiming stuff because you do what you think is right, and then somebody comes, yes, but, and if you wait for all the yes buts to be answered, you'll never do anything. So that's why I'm sort of sympathetic for somebody who's trying to do something by saying I'll plant trees or contribute to a water fund or something, because the fact that they're trying is better than the place. We're in a better place than we were 10 years ago when nobody was interested and nobody was trying. So I think we've got to sort of withhold judgment and not berate ourselves if we haven't got perfect solutions, because the perfect solutions often don't exist, and better to do something, test and learn, and better solutions will come forward in time.
Oh, absolutely. Love that. So, and there's lots of different ideas. My friend Bex, she's been on the podcast, Alex, I'm sure you remember. She's got a field next to her house that is her focus. So she's very much into sustainability, and she likes working with people who are focused on that. That's her focus. But part of what she does is she's got this massive field next to her house, and she's been spending time making sure that it's getting nature back, right? And that there's bees coming and indigenous plants, etc. So I think there's lots of ways that you can be involved in this movement. You know, there's not just one way.
No, not at all. And there's a lot to be said for localism and doing stuff on your doorstep. So for many people, seeing a field next to your house is going to be more motivational than getting a certificate for planting 100 trees somewhere else. So, yeah, I think so. And I think we're not great with nature, and I think that the new government in the UK came in making big promises for nature, have already rode back on a number of those, have abandoned a number of those, and actually committing, you know, you might argue, crimes against nature in some places. And that we do need to connect with nature, and there's a lot of research around people benefiting from being in green space and having green things around them, and getting out into the open air and doing things with their hands. You're doing things with your hands and your body rather than just doing, you know, just sitting behind a computer. And so that reconnection with nature, I think, is really important and probably underestimated. So, you know, whether you've got a field next to your house or you've got some tomato plants growing on your windowsill, you know, that you can get some of our connection back with the natural world, which is good for our minds as well as for our bodies.
And Alex, since your move to Colombia, you've had a lot of back to nature experiences, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally looking at the mountains right now from out the window. It's lovely. And
you were hiking last week, right?
yeah, no, I'm in nature a lot more these days, which is lovely, and it's very accessible.
Do you feel better for it?
I do really enjoy being out in the nature. It's very important. You can feel the difference especially if you've been kind of cooped up inside working on something for a while. You've got a project, and then you're like, oh, I need to get out, and you get out, and then you touch nature, and you're like, wow, this was really missing from my life.
What I found the most fascinating about Alex's move is when we worked together and he lived in the UK, Alex refused to eat avocados. And I love avocados. Coming from South Africa, we eat a lot of avocados. And Alex refused. He thought they were disgusting. And then he moves to Colombia, and suddenly he's eating avocados like for breakfast, lunch, and supper, because they grow there, right? And they're fresh and they're lovely. And so I find that funny.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a great source of my nutrition these days.
And then on the flip side is you hear all the negativity of the avocados that I eat because they have to be imported from somewhere, which means they've come on a plane, right? They've come from somewhere, probably from Colombia, and so they've actually, in the transport of it, used up a lot of you know, a lot, they've created a lot of negativity in terms of the space just for
Well,
me
then
to enjoy it.
also growing them. They're very thirsty. Avocados, they require a lot and a lot of water in some areas where they're growing, but they don't have that much water.
Yeah, it's a whole other topic, isn't it? About how, again, back to how we've sort of disconnected with nature, that we expect to see food in supermarkets that all year round, whenever we want it, or in perfect condition, and it's not really how it's grown, and we've lost the understanding of where it's coming from and how, and what the implications are. And you think of the coffee boom that we've had in what last couple of decades maybe. And coffee's become a much bigger thing, but coffee is it's a really damaging thing from a monoculture point of view, and land being cleared so that people can grow coffee beans and nothing else. And it's you're not good for bird life and insect life and all sorts of things. So yeah, all those problems exist, and I think it's easy. You can understand where people get swamped by it all. I think it's just too big a problem for me to fix, and I guess that's not our. It's not our job is to make it sound difficult for people.
Absolutely. But I do think that's why people just give up, right? Because you hit all these. I mean, Alex doesn't drink coffee, so that's why he's smirking. He's very happy. But it's easy to be overwhelmed. So where should someone start, Martin? Like so that they don't become overwhelmed. Where do you suggest someone just starts on this journey?
We've talked a lot about the environmental piece, haven't we, and emissions. And so if you haven't started at all, I think starting by measuring your emissions will probably give you some insight into just how your business is today. And that's a really useful place to start. And if you have that conversation, if you have that insight and then have conversations with people about it, actually you'd be surprised how interested and engaged people are. So I think if let's say you've never done that investigation before, and you get a report that says you're using X number of tons, you're creating X number of tons of carbon, and it's driven primarily by these different A, B, and C. If you went to your suppliers or your customers and said, but we haven't got any answers on this, but this is what we found out about the way we do business. What have you ever looked at it? What do you think about it? I think if you start the open conversations, you get people willing to chat about it. And that's when you then start to say, well, it doesn't feel right that we're doing this, does it? Or it doesn't feel right that we're doing that. And then people start to come up with solutions. So I think it's not feeling guilty about it and trying to solve the problem for yourself. I think it's that whole cross system change. And if you can engage other people that you're working with to start to think about, you know what, we have always done that. And why do we always do it? Why have we always done it that way? Let's think differently. Then you start to get minds working together. And I think it is a feature of people in the sustainable business space. I do find them very willing to collaborate on ideas, because you've got something, it doesn't matter what business you're in or what sector you're in, you're not trying to sell one business against to another. You're trying to figure out how do we work together to make the world a better place. So I think conversations are much more open and much more engaging in with businesses of that type, in my limited experience.
Oh, I love that. I think that's really, really nice. And what I loved about when you introduced this is you said it started with your values. And you said, oh, our values align anyway. This makes sense. And so I think that's the other aspect is do you know your values? How often do people not even know what the values they have as a business are, right? So start with that. What are your values? And if there's a value that doesn't align, well, ask yourself, why is it there? Do you still want to keep it?
I think so, and it's so much easier for smaller businesses, isn't it, to do that? And I think a lot of people roll their eyes and think, "Oh, values! It's those posters on the office wall that got imposed from head office." And that, I'm not sure that ever really motivated anybody particularly successfully. But if you're in a smaller business and you've got ownership of what that stuff is going to be and what your company purpose is and what you stand for, and you live those values, then you're in a whole different place. And I guess that's where, for us, if you go back to the B Corp stuff, then more than half our B Corp points are scored against what the pillar that B Corp would call community, and that's about us working with our business community and holding events and encouraging, helping business owners learn more about sales or becoming more confident in selling. So I think there's a lot we do around that. That again, it's sort of part of our values and our mission to do that sort of stuff that goes a bit beyond it's a bit beyond the money in the business. It's a bit beyond the stuff, the posters that you put on the wall, really.
Fantastic. Well, that's a good segue, Martin. We didn't actually let you introduce yourself and your business. So why don't you do that now and tell people what is it you do and how you can help them?
Oh yeah, I hope people haven't been listening for however long we've been talking and wondering who is this guy waffling on about stuff. So yeah, my wife and I run a business called Sales Untangled. We certified as a B Corp in 2020, and we work with primarily small and medium businesses to help them make some sense of sales and sales capability. So most business owners, and we reckon it's probably over 90%, are not experts in selling. They've not been trained in it. There's no reason why they would be. They've maybe never held a sales job. And so when their business starts to grow and they need to delegate that to somebody or to appoint somebody or recruit somebody, it becomes a really difficult challenge. And while we all know the sales is really important, the lifeblood of the business, it's a really difficult challenge for people. Some people are very uncomfortable with it. Some people don't want to appear pushy, don't want to be told no. So it's not only is it a logical and technical problem, I need to get the numbers, it's also an emotional block for people. So we just try and make it really simple. The untangled bit is we try and make it simple for people, try and help them create some simple processes and systems. Don't stop that, focus on this. And that really gives them some simplicity and helps them then to think about how can I carry on growing with some processes in place that help me simplify that sales part of the business, and go off and focus on the stuff that I'm passionate about or want to refine my product or refine my service.
And do you build B Corp values or processes into that training, or?
Not necessarily. So we do what is right from a sales point of view. So I would say they are somewhat different. I mean, as an example, we often recommend people. Often what we recommend involves people thinking differently about their sales organization. So they might be changing some of the roles, or maybe they'll recruit a sales admin to free up people to spend more time selling, for instance. So often we are advising people to think about part-time roles, and part-time roles very often are, say, returning mums who are really keen to get back to the workplace. You've got a massive pot of talent, but organizations don't think about, can I bring in part-time flexible resource? They think I've got a headcount signed off, or I've got 2 headcounts signed off, and I'll recruit somebody full-time 5 days a week. And it doesn't work for people. So in that example, we're helping people think more in a more diverse way, I guess, in terms of their workplace. But it's because it's the right solution. It's not because we start from instructing people to be more diverse in how they build the team, but it's a solution that fits and one that we've figured out can work for people.
Okay.
So how do your workshop processes look like? How do you kind of get to the bottom of where the issue might lie within a company, and how do you go about solving those problems?
We've just done something this morning, and we've just taken down a whole load of post-its from the patio doors outside. And I said, oh, I love post-its. It's such a good way of capturing thinking. So all our work is bespoke to each individual client, and there are themes that come out that are common themes, but every workshop is a little bit different depending on the people and depending on the problem. But we often start with just asking people to explain what's happening, what's working well, what's not working well, what are your disappointments, what do you want to be different, and often using post-its and just capturing that stuff is a great way of doing it. And then you can group it back into, okay, so what are the themes that are coming out? What are the big things that stand out? Now, for us, if we're talking sales stuff, usually there are some recurring themes, and you can spot the recurring themes. And from that, then we'll build some sort of plan, depending on people's capacity to drive things at pace or to take things steadily, depending on their priorities, their preferences. Some people like doing some things better than others. So the intention always is to come up with a workable, simple plan, and better to do 2 things well than to do 20. I have a list of 20 that you don't get onto.
Very similar to our process, right, Alex?
Yeah. So most of your sessions in person?
We do try to do stuff in person, because generally speaking, the results are better for everybody. So the outcomes are better usually if you've got the chance to play things around in a room. And that post-it example, it's quite difficult to do post-its virtually. And people's engagement is different, and it feels more like an important event, and getting agreements to things is easier. So we would always try, if it was logistically or geographically possible, to get people in the same room, but obviously there are times when we can't, and so we do stuff virtual as well. So that's obviously an option, but I think generally speaking that face-to-face for that sort of group exercise is going to get better results.
Fabulous. So Martin, if anyone is listening to this and thinks, I want to know more about B Corp, or I really need someone to untangle my sales, how can they get hold of you?
The best place to get hold of me probably is on LinkedIn. So you can go to our website, which is salesuntangled.co.uk. There are a whole load of resources and materials on there. Have a read, see what you find. But yeah, if you want to get hold of me, the simplest and most direct way is to get to LinkedIn and find me on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. What's the one takeaway you want our audience to get from this episode, Martin? What do you want to leave everyone with?
I would say on the topic of sustainability, don't wait for the perfect answer. But be brave enough to go and ask questions. And if you're asking questions, you're doing more than some other people are doing. And don't beat yourself up if you don't know the answer, because none of us really know the perfect answers, and we're all asking questions. And if you are prepared to do that and go in with an open mind, you'll find other people are having the same conversations, and you'll be surprised how far those conversations can take you.
Oh, I love that. Alex, your biggest takeaway today?
Well, I really like that what Martin just said as well. It's just also being curious, right? And just not being afraid to ask, but then also try not to get bogged down into too many details. Just try and look at some of the big impacts and make those changes first of all, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to have the largest impact on what you do.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Martin, for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great. Thank you both. Been a good chat.
Thank you, Martin.
Alex, fun as always, and I will see you again soon.
Thanks for listening to Giraffes Don't Eat Steak, where curious marketers zig when others zag. If you enjoyed the episode, share it with someone who loves great marketing conversations. And don't forget to follow, review, or drop us a note. We love hearing from fellow curious minds. And if your own marketing's feeling a bit tangled, check out our Marketing Power Hour. It's a focused one-to-one session designed to help you get clarity and momentum. Just go to themarketingdetectives.com and book your slot. Until next time, keep zigging.